Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I hope you're having a fabulous week. My light went out, so if I look a little gloomy, I'm not. It's just the lighting. Sorry. And I think I have some other Seahorse updates, but I wanted to do the spiel at the beginning. If you're on Instagram, don't forget it's going to look kind of funny because of the aspect ratio. You can always listen on Instagram, but if you want to see us and comment and ask questions, jump on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and then you'll see us. We'll be the top thing on the page. I am personally sipping on some Chardonnay tonight. It's my new favorite. Let me know what you're sipping on in the chat. And I have Holly, Cheryl, and Vincent with me tonight to discuss whatever comes up. It's open chat. We did discuss flatworms last week, and we had a request to discuss aptasia. So we're going to discuss those things for sure. But if you have any questions about anything or want to chat about anything, put it in the comments. Final thing is that not only is Christmas around the corner or whatever you celebrate, but the holidays. Let's just say it's the holidays. Not only is it the holidays, but we're approaching 3,500 subscribers. So we're going to have to do a giveaway. I'm debating whether we should do a giveaway of pods or something like that, or like a gift card to somewhere. You guys let me know what you would like to see given away on the channel in the comment section. With that, I will say hello to everyone. Hey, Zen Ginger, how are you tonight? Anything going new for any of you guys before we jump in? Ray, Cheryl, Holly, Vincent, anything new?
Nope.
Nope.
The end of AEP, thank goodness I can catch up on feeding everybody. They went 2 days of one meal a day. The seahorses did.
Oh,
And yeah, today I was home taking care of them and doing phone calls, last minute enrollments for people over the phone. But I managed to get their 3 meals in. And so now things are back on track. I have not had time to add the new aquachar yet and fix that. I also need to clean sumps and that kind of thing, but haven't had time. But now that AEP is over, I think my schedule's going to free up quite a bit going forward. So I'll have time to deal with all the seahorse stuff more now. They'll be happy.
absolutely. I mean, all of
They've
us go through
learned to
stuff.
watch for me since I'm gone all the time lately. They they like stick close to where the food comes and watch for me to come because they don't want to miss an opportunity to eat, poor things.
Aw. Well, real quick, I want to say Holly or Ray and Cheryl are having a little chat in the comments in our personal chat. And Ray said, "How about a winning lottery ticket?" Ray, if I had a winning lottery ticket, I would at least share it. I swear, but you never know. And Holly, real quick, when you say cleaning sumps, does that mean like a detailed cleaning? And how often do you do it?
Next to never, honestly. It's a big job. So, I mean, last time I cleaned the sump, the display tank I cleaned last year, and that one honestly I don't need to clean it. It was recent enough. It's fine, but in the grow out tank, I've never cleaned it. And it's got crap, loose crap all in the bottom of it. I don't even know what. And so yeah, it needs to be done.
I don't remember cleaning the pump.
You never clean
Yeah,
a sump?
that's about how often it is for me too, Ray. But I'm seeing stuff and I'm like, I need to clean this and get off the salt creep and just it needs some attention.
Well, that's one thing I learned with my seahorse tanks after doing the big reef. The reef tank I put too close to the wall, and literally I showed you guys on Wine Wednesday a year ago or
Mhm.
something where the paint on my wall came up and oh, it was terrible. So I learned not to put my tanks too close to the wall. Hi, Scotty, the fish freak. So glad you're joining us. If you have anything you want to know, talk about, let us know. And I did want to say real quick too, I did reach out to Gina's Reef. She was here last week. We're going to try to get her in here when she has a free Wednesday. And anyone who wants to jump in and have with us, all you got to do is reach out, and we will make sure to get you a link. And let's see, remind me to send you a video of them at work. So Scotty, do you have seahorses? I'm really curious to know. And you have babies behind the scene. Well, sounds like you need to jump in here and chat with us, because we talk constantly about raising fry and taking care of seahorses. Would love to know how you've done it and what your experience has been. So if you ever want to jump in and chat with us, let us know. And Ray, you said plastic sheeting on the wall stops the damage?
Yes. Whenever
Yes.
I have a tank against drywall, I put plastic up, and then I don't have the problem. Now you want to spread it out a lot further than just a tank. So say a foot out at least at the sides, and maybe a foot and a half above the top, and then you should be okay.
Makes sense.
I keep
Also,
mine.
if you've got a sump, you need the plastic behind the sump too.
Yep.
Yeah. I keep mine far enough away from the wall that I haven't had that problem. I did when I first started and used plastic, but it was a real royal pain putting the plastic up, taking the plastic down, and etc. So I just started moving my tanks out a little farther.
That's what I did.
You were saying,
Yeah, I don't have any against the wall, but the creep that I have is along the hoses and the top of the sump, and you know, that kind of, like, on my equipment, it's got the salt creep going on. And then I need to do my overflow boxes too, because on the grow out tank, it's not built in. They're hang on back. And to do that, my husband Scott told me, he says the best way to clean those, he says, you just should detach one, because the other one will keep working, and send it to the bleach bucket and then reattach it. So that sounds like a big job to me, but I guess it's what I have to do.
I'm right there with you. That's why I was curious, and I wanted to answer too, because I didn't realize on one of my first tanks that I needed to, like, the tubing that went down to the sump and the return tubing and all that. I didn't realize, you've got algae in your tank. You likely have algae building up in your tubes. So they need to be cleaned at some point. But I went years. Now I do it probably maybe once a year. I do a real thorough, let's get it done kind of thing. Scotty, I see you work at the public aquarium. You're near Seahorse Savvy and Kapil. Oh man, that's awesome. I'm so glad they're speaking at local clubs. We love having people from public aquariums in here too, because every different opinion counts. We've had Paula Carlson, Chris Carey, who did run Seahorse Australia and Seahorse World, comes in here all the time. So if you ever want to jump in and share your experiences or, comment on a topic, we'd love to have you. But anyways, Vincent, I'm curious, do you clean your sumps, or what's your go-to
I
for that?
don't clean the sumps, and the plumbing, I don't clean it unless I'm getting a restricted flow. But if you have aptasia, there's a good chance you have aptasia in your plumbing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's where he's leading us into what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. We're going to talk about aptasia, and we're going to talk about flatworms, because we promised Heather last week we'd do some research. So before we jump to aptasia,
Holly.
Go ahead.
It was Holly.
Holly, yes.
Yeah,
I saw
Holly.
Seahorse Corner and I said Heather. Hi, Heather.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Vincent. And I was slacking as per usual, but Vincent did some research. And Vincent, why don't you tell Holly what you found about?
Well, I don't know if she's here tonight,
I'll put up the link.
but there's really there's no easy fix as far as getting rid of flatworms. There's a link that Kelly's going to post that explains it, and but you're going to have to remove your seahorses, put them in a quarantine tank or in a bucket with some kind of air filtration, and treat it with the aptasia exit, or not aptasia, flatworm exit.
Yeah.
Yep. And I did just post the link. Go ahead, Vincent.
Well, I tried to find something that would be easy, but I just couldn't find it. So what we spoke about last week was pretty much the same. It's going to take some work to get it out.
Yeah.
And you're going to have water changes ready. You're going to have carbon on hand, and follow the directions to the T.
And I do, if Holly, if you are here, give us a shout real quick, because I'm just curious, because I started thinking about it, and like with the planaria, with the worms, nobody ever really worries about them because they aren't a big deal. In my very first seahorse tank, I had something. I still to this day don't know what it was. They were bigger than your average flatworm, and they would actually crawl on the seahorses. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do all flatworms crawl on the seahorses? Is that why it's
I don't know if they all do.
You don't want to see them.
I don't know if they all do, but the red ones will.
I think
And,
she said she had red ones.
Yeah, she had red ones.
Yeah,
And
the red ones are the coral eating, really pain in the you know what flatworms. The typical white ones, which are the only ones that I've had a problem with, and even that was minuscule, were very easy to eradicate. They came in on some copepods a friend sent me, and I caught one hanging onto a neonatal Combs fry by its tail. Realized it was a flatworm, hit the tank with a formalin, did not lose any of the fry, and never saw any more flatworms. So again, it's going to vary by species.
Sure. Well, I just wondered why, why, like, I understand when you see something, like I get irritated just because of the little, whatever type of species copepod somehow got in my tank. They're tiny little critters, but they get on my glass and I just don't like looking at them. So that's, then I work at figuring out how to get rid of it. So I just wondered if it was a situation where they were bothering the seahorses.
they can.
Whether,
They can.
Okay. Because if they're not, I'm getting old, guys, but in my old age, I've come to the point where if it's just something that doesn't look pretty anymore, I give it a little while to see if it'll go away, like nuisance algae and stuff, because it's such a pain. It's such a pain to get rid of it. And that depends on what we're talking about. Algae is different than like Aptasia, that you can't leave. So that's why I was wondering about the flatworms, whether they were an irritant to the seahorses, but apparently they are. So
yeah, they can irritate them, and not where they purposely irritate them, but they get on them and they'll irritate the spot that they're on.
They're opportunists. They're just going to walk where they want to walk, sounds like.
Yep.
And if the seahorse is there, they'll walk on it.
Right. Which is kind of like we've talked before about the stars, the white star. What are they called, Cheryl? Asternia?
Asterinas.
They're Asterina. Thank you. Those starfish, you see them in all the reef tanks. And, I saw them in my seahorse tank and didn't think much of it. Well, then we found out that because seahorses will grow, seahorses literally camouflage to a T, and they will grow algae on their bodies, and just as a defense camouflage mechanism, just because they don't move so much, so therefore it just grows as they're sitting there. Bottom line is the starfish, not meaning to hurt the seahorse, will crawl up on it while it's asleep, eating the algae off of it, and then accidentally eat their skin. So now all of a sudden we know, don't keep Asterina stars. Don't let them, if you see them, get them out. Don't freak out, but go ahead.
They don't even require algae to be on the seahorse. A friend of mine lost several. He had them in his tank. He didn't realize it. One morning he got up, one was on one of his males, stuck over the operculum. And when he went to move it, he realized it had already drilled the hole into the operculum. It was feeding off of the seahorse already. And that is not cool. And a lot of, if you get it, and it's like he finally broke his whole tank down and started over again because he couldn't get rid of those darn starfish. And I've heard that from a lot of different people.
Well, they do multiply like crazy. That's just like Aptasia, which we're getting to. But Seahorse Corner said Scooter Blennies took care of the flatworms for her and took a tiny one less than a week. That's a great idea. And I think, too, we need to talk in future episodes more about And actually, let me. I think I'm going to start another tank. I've got my tank that I want for the breeders, and when I get horses, I'm going to mix and match and move people around between the two tanks I currently have running. But I think I'm going to reset up the bedroom tank and do one with coral and with other fish, because that's what people seem to want to do. We talk on the channel all the time about how you don't want to mix species and you have to have the right fish and the right coral to make it work. But I think I'm going to do a tank like that just to kind of show that you can. That's my goal is at this point, is just to show that you can do the things that people want to do. So definitely. I see Kevin's here. Hi. Heather was actually asking me about the RKC chamber, so got to get with you. And I think we might try to see if we can't give one away for the holidays and for the 3,500 subscribers on YouTube. Anyways, sorry, got way off track.
I volunteer to win it. I volunteer to win.
You volunteer.
Volunteer to win it. Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
Heather wants one is because highly about the RKC chambers. And don't forget, if you're out there, Robert King will also do, individual ones. What I mean by that is he sells the 20 gallon, 40 gallon, but if you have an 80 gallon or 100 gallon, he can make you a bigger one, so yeah. Don't forget that too. But definitely. So hi, Kevin, I got off on a tangent. Sorry. Where were we? I got lost. Sorry.
And yes, he's asking, I am bundled up because yes, it's cold here. It's about 35 degrees outside. In this room I'm sitting in, it's probably like low 60s, like 63 or 65. And yeah, Ray, you're pretty much right. I like it hot.
Right.
I'm comfortable around 80, 78 is my favorite.
Listen, hey, this is a constant house. Sean says, put on a freaking sweater. And I'm like, hell no, turn that central air up or heat, I guess, this central system. And
I've got
it's crazy.
3 layers of sweatshirts on right now.
Oh, I can't do that. I can't.
I had the same arguments with my wife.
Yeah. She wanted it hotter.
If she was still alive now, then she'd be happy because it's getting to the point now. The cold is getting to me.
Oh boy!
I used to like it around.
Finally, be on the same page.
68 degrees. Now I need it up more like 70 to 72.
Yeah. See, he always wants it at 69, 70, and I'm like, listen, I've done videos showing that we used to keep this house at 74. So I know I'm not crazy. That's how it used. But I mean, with the prices these days, gas is going up.
Well, in the main room where I'm not right now, in the main part of the house, see, we have a wood stove going in there. And it is 68, 69. And that's about where that room stays, but I'm not in that room, and it doesn't get as far into here as I am.
Gotcha. Vincent, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, I keep my house down. I try to keep it 70 degrees, but I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it
for the fish.
From my seahorses.
I can't afford to do it for my fish. My gosh, that would cost me a fortune in the summertime.
But my wife thinks it's because I'm always hot. And so I just go along with it.
Funny. I'm curious, anyone in the comment section, do you guys have issues at home trying to keep your air for your fish tanks heated or cooled? That's a curious, interesting topic. And just to wrap up, because I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but for Holly, I know she'll watch this later if she's not here now. Basically, I'll send you that link personally, and I'll put it in the description too, the one that Vincent found, describing how to get rid of flatworms. Also, Seahorse Corner's suggestion about a blenny is a good one. I'm curious though, guys, how do you feel about adding a fish that like would you quarantine it first, or how would you deal with that?
I would make sure I got it from a source that I could trust it, or else I'd quarantine it.
That's what I would prefer, is finding somewhere where I know that it's safe. Like I
Yeah.
feel safe. Like if I'm buying from Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy,
Yeah.
I feel, her stuff, I feel it is safe.
Yep.
I don't like to go through the length of time and work it takes to quarantine anything. I just don't do it. I don't have the space to do it.
Fair enough. Cheryl, your
Yeah, it's
answer is
one.
the opposite, right?
Yeah. You just want to be careful when you're doing buy from a reliable source that you know is raising healthy, quality seahorses. Don't go to your local fish store and then end up taking them home and find out that they're wild caught and they don't eat frozen. That happens quite a bit. And you don't need those kind of headaches. You're better off paying more money and getting it from a reputable, well-known breeder that has a lot at stake.
And Seahorse Corner, I wasn't trying to call you out. Listen, you don't know how many times I've added things to the tank without quarantine. I was just asking the question to kind of get the conversation rolling. You know what I'm saying? Because people do things differently. Like Holly, I don't have the patience most of the time.
I'm
I've gone
lazy.
through stages.
She's just
Yeah,
saying that she didn't add the Blenny to
right,
eat the flatworms. She's saying she just noticed that it did.
right, exactly. Thank you. And I put up the comment. And Kevin needs to know what size char chamber we're talking about, Miss Heather. And I will just get with you on the side because, like the one that we do for the giveaway, I'll deal directly with Robert, or I might even, purchase it. We'll figure it out. But cool. Okay. So I think we've covered the flatworm thing as best we can. Francis does say he quarantines all new fish with formalin and clove oil for produce and bacterial issues, which is like the best and smartest way. I'm not saying it's not, but it's just a lot of people can't do that. You know what I mean? A lot
Well,
of people just can't do that.
yeah, the seahorses Francis has been dealing with are not being captive bred in this country. They're not coming from a
Right.
known breeder. And as such, he's at much higher risk for problems with the seahorses that he's working with, as opposed to somebody that's buying a pair from Alicia or somebody else along those lines. And it's like I posted earlier, I'm the nut that everything gets treated for parasites. Everything goes through a dip to remove any parasites. And my protocol is anything new, regardless of what it is, gets quarantined for 6 months before it goes into one of my established tanks. And it's because I've been through this enough times. I'd rather have an extra tank to worry about than have to go through all kinds of rigmarole to keep to save seahorses.
No, you're not wrong. That is the right. I don't disagree. That is the answer. But a lot, we're also
And most
talking
people,
about but we're also talking about the difference between someone who's trying to breed seahorses
yeah,
and has a point, has a goal, and someone just trying to keep a tank. So
exactly.
you're going to do the best of the best, your role and what you're doing, whereas someone just keeping a tank, setting up another you've got millions of tanks, right? You've got fry tubs, you've got
Yeah, but
seahorse tanks.
and
If
I
you
have
have that
peers.
many, you're going to be a lot more careful than if you're just doing a tank. Hey, Chimp.
Yeah, I have spares of everything, so I'm constantly like moving, taking down nurseries, scrubbing them, cleaning them. I'm the nut that takes reef-ready tanks and pulls out the overflows and modifies them as grow-out tanks for young seahorses. And I do a lot of goofy things, but I know what works for me, and I spend a lot of time doing it. But
Interestingly, I'm sorry, Heather just said she was surprised that the public aquarium who bought horses from her didn't quarantine them either. And I would ask this question, Cheryl, did you actually quarantine seahorses from Seahorse Source or from Seahorse Savvy?
now what?
Did you quarantine seahorses from Seahorse Source or Seahorse Savvy? Because they both tell you not to.
I quarantine anything coming in this house.
Right. You are just
Because, yeah, it's like when you spend 6 months working with a pair of seahorses that were wild caught to bring them back, get weight on them, get them healthy. They're looking great. The last thing you want to do is take a chance on introducing anything into that tank. In fact, that pair stayed in their own tank until for over 9 years. They never were exposed to any of my other seahorses. But it's one of those things you have to look at where they came from. Now, I have no problem like bringing in some seahorses from Seahorse Savvy and putting them in a tank. The probability of me putting any other seahorses that are in another tank in with them is going to be very, very slim because there's just too much potential for cross contamination.
So here's what I'm going to say. That is the correct answer. She is absolutely right. However, you know, if you're not in a position where you're taking care of multiple tanks and you have extra tanks, don't beat yourself up, is all I'm saying. Cheryl's right. If you're able to do it, you should quarantine everything. But I will tell you, Dan has come on here before many times and talked about the fact that for instance, if you have a problem with your seahorses and you didn't follow the directions of the person that sold them to you, then you're going to have trouble. So if Dan used to, and Alyssa from Seahorse Savvy also, do not quarantine, temperature acclimate, and add them to the tank because they're captive bred. Mm-hmm. Somebody in Francis's position, that's a different story. He's dealing with seahorses that are not from a reputable breeder.
I agree. It depends on where they're coming from, who raised them, and how were they raised. I can name several, quote, breeders that I guarantee you, if I were ever to buy a seahorse from them, it would be quarantined for at least 6 months. And I'm not going to slander people, but I can tell you right up front that
Thank you, Cheryl.
No, she's not talking about you, Vincent. Jeez. But and I won't be quarantining Vincent's seahorses at all, so don't worry about that. But I'll show you when I get them and put them in. But I was just going to say, absolutely, and I would include Ocean Rider even in that. But what Cheryl just said was important because when I had multiple species around my house, that was one thing I made sure nothing, different nets, different everything. And the one pair of seahorses that I did quarantine, it wasn't for 6 months, but I quarantined them for a while, were the Cuda. Because they were a species I'd never kept before. And it was a quarantine more to learn their behaviors more than worrying about, because they were from Seahorse Source, right? So I knew they were good, but just not knowing how Cuda behave, it was better for me to put them in a very basic, smaller tank and learn how they ate, how they, interaction, if they were scared of me, if any of that. Okay. Sorry, Ray, what was the question? You can always interrupt.
He wanted to know why not quarantine.
Well, again, wait, real quick. Ray, I'm going to let you speak, I promise. But I would say for people like Shyla and Francis that are dealing with, they don't have a reputable breeder near them, you have to quarantine for absolute sure. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that if you're dealing with a reputable, I can't say the dang word, reputable breeder with seahorses, stress is the number one thing you're trying to avoid. So putting that, switching tanks and this, that, and the other is so. I just know from personal experience that Alyssa from Seahorse Savvy and Dan from Seahorse Source both recommend temperature acclimation and adding them to a tank. But they also recommend a tank with certain things in it, right? So you're not talking about throwing them in a reef with clownfish. You're talking about, anyways. Go ahead and answer, Ray.
Well,
wait.
You got to look at your filtration.
Okay, let Ray talk.
You got to look at filtration.
Cheryl, hang on. We're all trying to talk at once. Ray, go.
When it comes to quarantine, I never quarantine, but then again, I never mix anything. When something goes in that tank, that's it. It stays there until they're gone. But that's a personal choice. And I choose not to quarantine. First of all, I'm lazy. I don't like to do that kind of thing. But the biggest reason for it is that I'm not sold on quarantine being the be-all and the end-all to prevent a problem. When you put a fish or a seahorse or whatever in quarantine, you have it in a tank, and if you're not treating it, it's just under quarantine, if the conditions in that quarantine tank are not such that they're going to stress that seahorse or the fish, it's unlikely any pathogens that it might have are going to come to the forefront. So you can keep that seahorse or fish in that quarantine for, say, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, and nothing happens. It still has those pathogens. You can put it into the tank that's intended to go into, and at that time, conditions may not be suitable for it, and the stress will allow the pathogens to multiply again and take over, and then you got your problem. And then
Yeah,
you're going to sit there wondering, why the hell have I got a problem? Because I quarantined.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you, I think it has more to do with right after being shipped. Like, I think you're talking about the seahorse that comes to you bringing in the problem. I'm saying if the seahorses you already have, or the tank you already have, the fish, the coral, whatever's in your tank already, if there's a problem there that you don't know about because you don't have seahorses in it yet, and you get in new seahorses that are clean and fine, I'm more worried about them, to be honest. And so what I'm thinking is it's about shipping, and they're stressed during shipping. They get to you, having a quarantine period, especially. And again, it comes down to whether you're buying from a reputable breeder or if you're getting something you're not sure of.
Does
Cheryl,
One of the things, when I say I quarantine them, if I buy 2 pairs from Seahorse Savvy, they're going to be going into a large tank. Nothing else will ever be added to that tank. They're being quarantined permanently in their own home.
they're being observed?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not going to take a chance on contaminating them with anything else. Just like I would never mix hippocampus combs with erectus or engines or cuda or anything else, because I know they can be carriers, and coming out of the wild are very often are carriers of Euronema. Yes,
well,
it's
and
treated.
Cheryl, actually, Dan said that too. He doesn't even suggest mixing species from him
Exactly.
because they might, as you said, it's just not affecting that
Exactly.
seahorse. So not mixing is a whole nother batch, a whole nother topic. But how do you respond to Ray's comment that, yeah, you're quarantining them to learn, observe them? Some people treat, some people don't. But if you don't treat and just observe, then when you put them in the tank, it's the same scenario. Where if they have something,
To
how?
me, if you're just observing, there's the possibility that you might miss something.
Right.
Yeah,
Too.
and
Yeah,
if
but
you
you
do,
Just because you're observing doesn't mean you're going to catch
no, but you
Well,
don't want to.
necessarily wrong.
You don't
Vincent's
want
been
to
trying to
treat.
talk. So
You don't want to
go
treat
ahead.
a lot of stuff you treat seahorses with or fish, or not the best thing. I mean, in the long run, it might
It
affect them.
stresses them out.
So you don't
Yeah.
want to treat everything that you bring in. So you put them in an observation tank if you have one,
exactly.
and you observe it and look for any signs that might show parasites or whatever they might have before you put them in your tank. But I think Alyssa's more concerned with acclimation. When you
Yes.
ship something, the pH in that water drops.
Right.
When you
And
open that bag,
like,
oxygen hits it. The ammonia becomes toxic
It
if you leave them in
ammonia
that
becomes
bag.
ammonia. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That
so
I actually
that's,
have a. I'm sorry,
oh,
Vincent. I didn't
well,
mean to
that's the
interrupt.
reason I don't acclimate anything but temp acclimate. And
yeah,
then I plop
exactly.
them in. And I learned that years ago from working at a shop where we got 15, 20 boxes of fish. Well, for one, you don't have time to acclimate. So you pick the tanks, you put the bags in, you let them sit there. We'd let them sit for 45 minutes, an hour. And then we'd go in and start taking them out of the bags and putting them in the tank. I've never lost a fish by not acclimating. Never.
Well, I just want to say real quick. I agree with everything everybody said. When I do an observation tank, like I told you guys, the only seahorses that I ever did a quarantine tank for, which was observation, not treatment, was the Cuda. And it wasn't to see if they had parasites. They were from Seahorse Source. I trusted Seahorse Source. It was literally because I had never kept them. So I wanted to learn their behaviors. I wanted to see how they ate, because they did. They ate different than Barbori or Erectus or whatnot. All these species eat differently. Their behaviors are different. I was just doing it so I could learn my seahorses. We talk all the time about once you seahorses, that's how you know when there's a problem. It doesn't always have to be a seahorse flopping or gagging or whatever. It's that you can tell by their behavior whether or not something's wrong with the tank. So that's why I quarantined. And I would just say again, trust it. No, let me back up. If you're going to a trusted breeder like Alyssa or Seahorse Source, or anybody you trust, then like Vincent, then follow their directions. If they say just tank acclimate, just tank acclimate, or temperature acclimate, just temperature acclimate. If you're getting it from someone you don't know and you don't know whether they're wild caught or you don't know what tanks they've been in, then absolutely quarantine is the best option. I don't want to give any bad information out here. And what was the other thing you said, Vincent? I wanted to respond to something else you said. It was damn it, I hate when I do that. The ammonia pH thing.
Yeah.
I actually have a video about that because I got 2 seahorses from Seahorse Savvy, but I didn't get them directly. So the last pair that she was sending out of Reedeye, this was long ago, and it wasn't her fault. She sent them to the store that was near me. They were buying them. And so I called the store, and I wanted to buy them, but the store bought 4, okay? And so when they got them in, they called me, and I rushed in. It was an hour away. So I got in my car and I started speeding down to Indianapolis to pick up these seahorses because I was so excited to have Reedeye. And they opened the bag and they took out their 2 seahorses, put them in their tanks, and reclosed the bag. That is exactly what Vincent is talking about. Because they opened the bag, air hit the water, the ammonium turned into ammonia, and they were literally like burning all the way home, an hour drive.
Aww.
And they were a mess. And I did a video about it. I'll put it in the description. I was able to not only help them, but I kept them for years. They were great. So check out that video if you want to understand why you don't want to open the bag and then like drip acclimate or whatever. It's a no good situation. But I do want to say Francis did point out variables include invertebrates or species that may not fare well during torrential treatment during quarantine. And that's a highly debated topic. Do you treat or do you observe? And I get Vincent's point, or I can't remember who made the point, but if you're not going to catch parasites, but you should, because if they're scratching their head, if they're using their tail to scratch their gills, there's a problem. If they're not eating, there's a problem. So I'm a firm believer in observation. I don't count out anybody who does. That's okay too. Whatever floats your boat, right? And Francis, of course, is dealing with seahorses that he doesn't know how reputable the breeders are. So he is doing the right thing following Cheryl's protocol. And go ahead.
The thing is that you have to remember when you're working with people that are new to seahorses, they've never really observed them before. And I can see things, somebody can put up a video of something new that they got, and I'll be like wanting to crawl under the bed and hide because I know what I want to say, but I'm not going to say it. And the thing is, you have to, the ability to differentiate with what's wrong and what's right is dependent about how long and how much knowledge you have. And this is why I try to show, if I can show pictures or give an in-depth discussion, explanation. When I see a seahorse with a weak snick that's extending the trigger or extending the mouth and retracting the trigger and it's staying open for prolonged periods of time, that is abnormal. There's something seriously wrong going on there. But the average person is not going to see that.
Sure.
And this is where people get into trouble. And, we do our best to help them. But starting off with a mentor that can guide you is worth its weight in gold.
Right. I keep going back to it, but I just want to say again, it also depends on your goals. Okay. Like it depends. Like if you're trying to breed seahorses and that's your goal, you got to have everything sterile. You got to follow every protocol. If you're buying seahorses that you don't know about the breeder, you've got Cheryl's protocol is absolutely correct. If you're buying from Seahorse Savvy and she says just temp acclimate, don't open the bag and then plop them in, then that's what you do.
That's
Do
exactly what I
say.
do.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Ray said, Ray, say what you said in the comments.
Well, just the fact that they're, if you put them in quarantine and if you don't see any scratching, that's no guarantee that the parasites aren't there. Parasites are always there. And what I'm saying is that if you have the parasites on them and if something in that tank is stressing them, then it'll get to the point scratching or whatever, and it's going to get worse depending on how long the stressor is there. But when it comes down to it, really, in real life, people are going to do what they see best for themselves.
Yeah.
So all we can do is hope that they look at the different sides of the equation and for the pluses and minuses, and then make a judgment that is suitable for the risk that they're willing to take.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So we have so many different people that I know are not going to do dick all to save anything, and then we have the other extreme where they'll bend over backwards for everything. Well, I
like me and Holly, like doing hospitally in the hospital. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Now, for me, I sit in the middle, and if I have a hospital tank set up, it's not to observe, it's to treat. It's because one of my seahorses has come down with something. And so the first thing I do is get it in the hospital tank and start treating. Second thing I do is rectify the problem that caused it in the display tank. But
and
as
always
far as
keep
quarantine,
up.
I'm not sold on it. But then again, if you're a believer in it, then go for it.
Well, and that's why I love Wine Wednesday so much, is that we have literally different people that are experts in their own way that just, don't disagree, but do things differently. There are different ways to do it. You know what I mean? So, and again, I just go back to, it depends on where you're buying from, whether you trust the person selling.
Well,
I would.
You know what? I'll say too, when I first started with seahorses, I didn't read anything because this was like before I was really in internet, before there was much information on the internet. I mostly learned from books. And when they were talking about keeping seahorses, they were basically talking about seahorses being kept in reef type tanks.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how I learned to do it. It wasn't until I came on here and started learning from people that they could be kept successfully in an artificial environment. You don't need sand, you don't need live rocks and other types of things. And I found it's a lot easier to keep them that way. So I went from a reef type tank for seahorses to all artificial, because what I learned is that it's easier for me and my kind of schedule and husbandry skills to keep a tank that has artificial decor than to keep an actual reef tank.
Well, and that's a great point, Holly. Hang on, because Chimp the Reefer's talking about quarantine. I've quarantined my fish with copper for 2 weeks, and then General Cure, and then Metro. I think it's been a while since he added any fish. The two things I'd say is most people with seahorse tanks don't end up adding a lot of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You just enjoy the seahorse tank, but and Holly just gave a very excellent description as to why she went to artificial. And why, like Cheryl talks about, nothing in the tank, tubs, all this stuff. But Cheryl breeds, Holly breeds, and Holly just, I'm not going to say any. I'm just saying, she said, I don't want the maintenance. But if you want looks like a reef, you can do that too. You know what I mean? It's just what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
It's just more variables. Yeah, if you're putting other types of fish in with them and then vertebrates and things that could possibly bring in, pathogens and pests and things like that. It's just more to worry about. And those types of things, you might want to quarantine. To me, I just found that doing all that was a pain.
Well, and I agree, and I just when I play devil's advocate, it's because I'm thinking of people like Zen Ginger. So Zen Ginger, you come here, you want to learn about seahorses. I just try to give you every option. Like if you want to have seahorses that live for 14 years or 10 years or whatever, and you just really care about the seahorses, we can show you how to set up that tank. If you want to breed, there's a different way to set up that tank. If you just want one tank, not 5, not 4, not 2,
not
just want one
16.
tank, not 16, right? Different way that you can set it up. You can. I started with a 29-gallon with 4 seahorses in it. Don't do that, please. But that's what I started with. It was beautiful. It ended up in a magazine. It had macros everywhere. And then after about a year, one of my males got pouch emphysema, and I had to figure out why. And that's how I got introduced to all these people. And then I figured out to add a sump with an algae scrubber. Then I figured out don't add other things because whatever. But in that tank in the first year, everything was great. And I had one of what are the huge snails that like
Turbo?
stick out? No bigger than that.
Nefarious? Is it
Nope.
Nefarious?
It might not even be a snail. It's got a big shell and it literally knocks over rocks. It sticks its
A
face out.
conch?
Yeah, a conch. I had a conch in that tank. I was doing everything somewhat wrong, right? And it still was okay for a year. So it really depends on your goals. I just don't want anybody to come and be like, oh, I don't want to do seahorses because my God, I can't have anything else in there. Be ugly and whatever. You've seen Holly's tanks; they're pretty, and I've shown you tanks
I do have other fish in my display tank. Well, because I had them first, when it was reef style, and when I converted the tank to all artificial, I kept the other fish and invertebrates and things as well. And they don't seem to care that they're not in a reef anymore. They're doing fine too. So you can even have all artificial and have some other things in the tank.
Yeah, Holly, aren't you in that you've got the half sand, half not sand, and your Nefarious snails hang out on the, which everybody says you can't have Nefarious snails without
anymore
sand. But I mean,
I don't have
out.
snails.
But didn't they hang
No,
out?
I don't have snails.
I thought you said that.
No, I have crabs. I have different kinds of crabs.
You have crabs?
I was
Carol, pipe down.
I have peppermint shrimp, and I have a few different crabs in there. So those are the invertebrates I had. There was snails when I had the reef type setup and sand and all that, but they eventually disappeared. They all died out. So I don't have any snails anymore. I have all the other things.
I must do something right because my snails always have babies. I always have snails. But real quick, I want to go to the comments. Francis said, quarantine protocol for me is deworming, targeting protozoans, and increasing vitamins and probiotics through the quarantine phase. Hey, I don't disagree with you at all. I just think the average person, I don't want them to be scared off. You know what I'm saying? You guys are saying the right things and giving the right information. I just don't want someone who just wants a basic tank and isn't looking to like do what we do. Francis, you're looking to actually keep seahorses for a long time and different. That's amazing. We need people like you to breed the seahorses so lazy people can just keep them. But you go through all that and then we will just keep them. And Chimp pointed out that it's tougher in a reef because you can't treat the tank because most meds will kill the coral. Right. So again, as I said before, it depends on the tank you're setting up. If you're
Never
trying to set
treat
up,
a seahorse tank.
right, but I'm just saying, the debate about Holly and I have quizzed Dan about this before. If you say, okay, the seahorse has a problem in the tank, you take the seahorse out and treat it. You put it back in the tank, the same problem exists, right? Unless you fix the problem in the tank, right?
It depends what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it really does.
True. And there was a question
Part
I
of the
wanted us
problem,
to answer.
part of the problem new people have is they may think that seahorse doesn't look right, but they don't really know why it doesn't look right. And unfortunately, they'll post a picture that you can't see to see what the seahorse is
With
doing,
blue lights.
and it makes it very hard to help them. And at the same time, they're kind of in a panic also because they don't want to lose the seahorse. And that's where you have to. That's where you kind of end up holding hands with them and try to help them through it, because these people aren't researchers. They're not trying to. I've worked with research facilities also. These are individuals that are doing something they really care about and they want to get good at and they want to learn how to do
Yep.
it. And I
Yep.
respect them for that. You know,
Me
I
too.
work with,
That's why I play devil's advocate and I say, hey, what they're saying is correct, but you can keep seahorses in an easy way. It's not easy, or it's not hard. It's just different
yeah.
than keeping a reef, right? And Ruskin wanted to know, and welcome, Ruskin. We're so glad you're here. Hope I'm saying that right. This is
You
his
really
first time
rusty?
attending. It's Ruskin. Has anyone ever mixed Erectus and Reed-eye together? Who wants to take it?
People have, because they are able to breed. You can keep those two together. I think those are the only two you can keep together. I've never done it, but people do.
Well, they interbreed in it's estimated with the research that's been being done out of the University of Southern Florida that approximately 30 to 33% of all individuals in the Gulf are hybridization between Reed-eye and Erectus. And they're actually been doing DNA testing for a number of years now. That's what Lucia was involved with, when she was living down along the Indian River. And it's still an ongoing study. But there are assumptions being made that since they do interbreed in the wild, they do have the same home ranges, that they're both going to be susceptible to and carry the same pathogens, so to speak, and also the same strengths. The other thing is from a zoological perspective, you've heard of the expression hybrid vigor. What that means is two closely related pairs, closely related individuals of slightly different species have mated together, and the hybrid vigor comes in when the offspring exceed either parent in their ability to survive and glean food.
So they get the best from both, and they're stronger.
Yeah, but by the same token, you have to be careful because in order to establish this, you really need to be doing online DNA testing before you mate.
And that was the scientific answer. I'm going to give you the Kelly answer.
Sorry.
The Kelly answer is exactly what she said, but it's hard to grasp in your head because we say buy captive bred, then you're safe, and you are. But the reason that we say don't mix certain species is because, think about it this way. This is how I wrap my head around it, right? Is that seahorse species come from certain parts of the ocean. Even though we're not buying wild caught, we're buying captive bred from a trust. The breeder is wild caught in. He's conditioning them, treating them, making sure they're pathogens. But as Ray pointed out, they're never. There are pathogens in our tanks, reef or otherwise, all the time. You just control it by maintenance and by keeping the fish less stressed out. So so Akuta carries uranema, right? It doesn't hurt him. It doesn't affect him until he gets, well, whatever. I'm just giving an example. Combs carry uranema. It doesn't affect them. It doesn't hurt them unless they get really stressed out or they get in a situation where they're stressed. Erectus carry
Vibrio.
I don't know. Vibrio. Thank you. Vibrio. And it's constantly with them, but it doesn't hurt them. They're just carriers, right? If you put them in the same tank, the erectus can't handle the urinema, and the combs can't handle the vibrio, right? So it's something that you just don't mix the species. I hope that made sense. I hope that made it easier to understand.
Well,
I don't know, but
let me give you another.
with wait
Okay.
It's like
with
the
reed-eye and
Europeans
erectus.
bringing disease to the Native Americans when they came here.
Thank you. And with and reed-eye, the reason they say that you can mix those two is because they come from the same waters, and they are actually having hybrid babies in the ocean on their own. So obviously they can live together and handle the diseases each carry. So not only have I kept erectus and reed-eye together, but I've also kept hybrids. So yes, those two can be mixed. That's the end of my answer. I'm going on to the next one.
Kelly,
Go ahead, Vincent.
do the hybrids, can they breed?
I
They
don't
have,
think so.
see, I don't think they can. I don't think the
No.
hybrids can reproduce.
Vincent, that has come up. They are finding now that not all of them will. The thing is, there's about 400 women pair bond. It's been discovered that in the wild, a hybrid will always select basically a purebred. In other words, they don't
Yep.
interact, breed together.
Mhm.
However, some people now have been reporting hybrids that are actually breeding with each other, which
Oh,
tells
wow.
me they're moving on to eventually. This is where speciation comes in, is they're developing
Uh-huh.
a new species, but it takes a
They're
long
getting stronger. But no,
Yeah.
Cheryl's right, and I remember Alyssa telling me that is that because when I bought the hybrids, that they wouldn't breed with each other
Mhm.
at that point,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they would breed with a reed-eye
Yeah.
or an
I
oriole.
think that's
Yeah.
where I got it from. Alyssa said that they haven't had any success
Mhm.
breeding the
Some people,
hybrids.
It takes a long
some
Yeah,
time to
there.
get them to, Go
some
ahead,
people are
Cheryl.
now reporting some success. It's still very small,
Yeah.
Right.
but it's
Mhm.
definitely moving forward.
But to
And
answer
again,
the ultimate, go ahead.
I was going to just say, also, if storms blow in, they get knocked around, they get moved around. How are we to know what they see in the other seahorse that causes them to select that mate or not? And
Right.
it's like Dan says too, with the hybrids, sometimes you can look at them and they look like reed-eye. Sometimes you can look at they look like erectus.
Yep.
So are the
Mhm.
seahorses confused, or do they know the difference through pheromones, or what?
Well, I just have to tell you, I had the most beautiful hybrid ever. I'll post a picture when we're done if you guys remind me. But I swear to God, it would swim around and look like a rainbow. It had colors
Mhm.
going down its sides. I have a picture where you're like, wait, did she Photoshop that? And I did not. It was gorgeous. It could do
Mhm.
anything. And that was the seahorse that ended up getting pouch emphysema problems. And I treated, could not get the seahorse to get better, was so devastated. Finally had him in a tank where I just thought, I'll let him, he was still eating, so I'll let him just, pass. And he got better just from fresh water. It was amazing. It was incredible. He lived for years. It was nuts.
Mhm.
Anyways, just said I'm not terribly concerned with breeding. Right. That's why I keep playing devil's advocate, right? Because
Mhm.
most people just want a tank. And I know that we're giving out good information and the best information, but I don't want to scare anybody because it really is easy to keep a pair of seahorses. It's so easy.
It
It's
really
just
is.
if you
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
into breeding and doing things all the exact right way, then if you want to do that, we'll help you with that too. But Andrew, we can help you just set up a seahorse tank that's very easy to keep.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you said technically she has 15 tanks, 14 freshwater and one brackish. Saltwater seahorses will be the 16th. We love you. We're all about you. We
And I'll
love
say my saltwater experience started with seahorses. Some people will tell you, don't get seahorses until you've kept other saltwater fish. I don't agree with that. I started with seahorses and did fine.
well. Wait, you said what do people say, Holly?
A lot of times I read, advice for people new to seahorses. that says don't get seahorses until you've kept other marine fish, until you have experience keeping saltwater tanks. And
Really?
That's old
I
school.
don't agree with
That's
that
old
at all.
school.
I would
I
say I would
I
say
agree. I agree
go
with
ahead,
that.
Vincent.
I agree
Okay.
with that for the simple reason, and it's the hobby and as a whole. You have to be dedicated to doing it. You're unique, and there's a lot of people just like you.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of people who would be overwhelmed in the
Mhm.
beginning if they have any issues. To where if you have experience
Mhm.
in salt water,
Can overcome
I
it.
think you have a better chance.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the counter argument to that. And I'm sorry that you guys hear this background noise. I've got family doing stuff. But the counter argument is once you keep a reef tank, you think you know how to keep well, you do know how to keep a reef tank.
Yeah.
And as I've said repeatedly, Seahorse tank is not difficult, just different. There are different
Exactly.
rules. Like, in a reef tank, you want to keep the temperature up for the coral and you want to dose this and dose that. And you got to worry about this and that. With a Seahorse tank, it's actually much easier. You just got to follow the basic rules. Stay below 74 degrees. Don't keep more than a pair per 30 gallons. Blah, 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 blah. And that doesn't count for breeders like you, Vincent, who can keep multiple because you know what you're doing. But for a newcomer, simple. But I know Dan, when I talked to Dan the first time, he said, "Have you ever kept seahorses? Have you kept a reef? Forget everything you learned and let's start over." Because I had certain thoughts about how to keep a tank right that were
That
just
sounds like
opposite.
Dan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Oh, Heather
just throwing out
says
the counter argument.
seahorses were her first saltwater fish also.
Well, see, you guys are. I guess the people I know have me worried. Because
Why?
Well, that's true. I will say, freshwater. It's. I think if you have some experience with freshwater fish first, at least that helps. Too, so you get a little idea of how the equipment works and stuff. But even that, I think you can do it. You just have to learn,
Yeah.
and it's as easy to me to learn starting with seahorses than it would be with a reef tank or anything else because you don't know what you don't know.
I agree with
I
you,
am.
Holly. I actually
yeah, I
do agree
guess.
with you. And I think
Yeah.
that if someone started with seahorses, they'd be excellent at seahorses. Like I said, the alternate theory is that when you start with a reef tank, then you have to unlearn everything to keep seahorses, which I don't think either way is
Mhm.
completely right. But I definitely think I love that Heather started with seahorses. Shyla, first and only tank
Shyla
with
did too,
seahorses.
she says.
Yep. But all they really need is Wine Wednesday, right? You just come here and we help you and then we're good and you can keep seahorses tremendously. And
I'm going
anytime
to.
these science folks start wrong way. Science folks start talking science, me and Vincent will come back and me and Vincent and Holly will come back and be like, "It's easy. Just do it this way." Just kidding.
Well,
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I actually started out. Well, actually, I started out when I was a child with freshwater, and when I started college, I started doing saltwater, and I had coral reef tanks for quite some time before I ever got my first pair of seahorses.
Yep.
Well, something happened when I got the seahorses, and I went off the deep end, broke down my saltwater, my reef tank, and started setting everything up for seahorses, and I've never looked back. It just they just hit me,
Sure. It
and
depends on what you want and love, for sure.
yeah. But what I
But
was going to say
okay.
earlier is I get this going back a few years, and I know people get bummed because if they lose a seahorse, they feel that it's their fault, they did something wrong, and one of the things I don't want them to do is blame themselves.
Right.
And I got a message from a research institution in Malaysia, and they'd brought in over 300 captive bred cuda that they were going to do research on. Within a matter of days, they started dying, and they contacted me when they were really getting some significant losses. And I told them, they needed to treat with antibiotics because they were exhibiting tail rot. Well, the head PhD on the project didn't believe it because he brought out an electron microscope and showed the organisms living on the tails. They were ciliates. They were eating the necrotic tissue.
Yeah.
And that's what was killing the seahorses. And I sent them back a message complete because they have different antibiotics in different formulas. I sent them back the chemical formula of what I wanted them to use to treat them. And the graduate student wanted to take the major professor into going through with this. I got a message 3 days later after all of this went down, after they got the meds started. They hadn't lost any more seahorses.
That's awesome. First, I want to take a quick time out to just say the reason that Vincent and I keep going black is because we have family and we're coughing and sorry. But when we go black, we're still here and listening and sharing. We just want to be here, but you don't want to see me hack or him. So just letting you know. And Ruskin, you said you started with seahorses. You've had 4 erectus for 2 months with your dad as your mentor and had 0 issues. Everybody clap. Clap.
Yeah.
All right. Good job. And we'd love to know your setup. I mean, your dad is your mentor. That's amazing. Apparently he kept seahorses. We want to know more. We want you to share. We'd love to hear your experience because that's one thing we say every week is that everybody does things differently. And when you have a successful setup, share it. But I was curious too. Andrea said, no, let's see. I think it was Andrea. Andrea said, seahorses first. You follow along in reef groups because you keep softies and gorgonians, and their reef fish problems sound way worse. Right. Yeah. Wink. I agree. I kept a reef, and it is harder to do a reef, in my opinion. But we go into so many details in talking about a seahorse tank on this channel that I worry sometimes that people think it's harder. It's not. I agree. 100%. Corals. Oh, so much harder. You can't tell what they're doing half the time, right? And Shyla said she's only had seahorses for 7 months, hopefully many more years to go. What's the oldest seahorse? I think we've said this before, but let's say it again. What's your oldest? What is the oldest you kept a seahorse, Ray?
I don't even remember for sure. Closer to the 10-year mark, but not at 10. That the ab right now is 7.
Still amazing. 7 years. To think.
But I had a lot that never made it a year. Like when I started 20 years ago, my first ones never lasted a year. My second ones, I don't think lasted a year.
Wait, do you mean by your fry or your adults?
No, I'm talking about adults. I wasn't even
really.
That was back 20 years ago, eh?
So they were wild caught.
I started in 2002, my researching, and then 2003 might have been the end of 2002 when I got the first breed eye. But I had a lot of problems, but then again,
there wasn't as much information.
Depending on the forums with seahorse.org and what was known then. And for what is known now compared to what was known back there in 2002 and 2003, there just is no comparison at all.
Like, did the work.
True
you
story.
Did the work, and
that's
we
right.
benefit. We benefit
back
from
then
the
to have
work
a
you
tank
did.
with 10 times or 20 times flow volume, there's no way.
They need low flow.
They had to have nice, calm tank.
Yeah.
Yep.
My first seahorses were back around 1990. And I think I want to say I had them maybe 4 months.
Those were the little packets with the dwarf seahorses and the brine shrimp eggs.
No, that was, I'm pretty sure what I had was erectus. They were big. They were adults, probably wild caught a good 8 inches or so. And yeah, I had a pair. I had an under gravel filter. That's what we had back in those days. I cycled the tank with the blue fish. What are those?
Damsels.
A blue damsel fish I used to cycle the tank. I had a pair of seahorses, and they didn't last long. I'd say probably 4
Did you
or
have
5
the damsel? Did you have the damsel in with the seahorses?
Oh no, the damsel had to die to cycle the tank.
Oh,
That's
Okay.
unusual.
They told me.
YouTube's gonna demonetize. Stop
Yeah.
it.
That was what you did back
I
then.
know.
That's what they advised you to do.
See,
But
when
that's
I,
It
why
was all wrong.
that's
when
why
I
I'm
was in
so
my late teens, my first
glad.
seahorses.
I'm so thankful that people like and Dan and Ray and everyone else did the work for us. So now we can like set up seahorse tanks and keep them for years. I had a seahorse live 12 years. I
That's
mean,
nice.
When
it's
I was
nuts.
still in my late teens, somebody got this brainiac idea to collect dwarf seahorses and sell them with uh, baby brine shrimp. And I was dumb enough to buy some.
Mm,
I didn't know any better.
sure.
It didn't go well. I'll put it to you that way.
Well, that's
Yeah,
why
here
we're
in the 50s,
so.
They don't
they
need
were
a.
sold as sea monkeys.
Well, sea monkeys, I've
They were
had those.
monkeys.
I have those now. I have those now. Those are brine shrimp.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to
Okay,
sell them
guys.
in comic books, but they used to sell the dwarf seahorses in comic books too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
And I
that's what the
never
sea
got
monkeys were for.
those until later on. I did
Okay.
get dwarf seahorses like in the 2000s. I had
And to be clear, guys, when we talk about seahorses living for 10 to 14 years, that's extreme. 8 years is good, but think about it. 8 years. How long do you keep a dog? I don't know. But anyways, I was gonna say this has been so much fun, and I'm so glad we have so many new people coming tonight. But we do have to jump into the Aptasia because that was a request. So Cheryl, do you want to tell us what we want to talk about Aptasia real quick?
Well, basically, the biggest problem with Aptasia is the seahorses can get stung by it. And I know more than one person, experienced keepers, that realized they had Aptasia in their tanks when they lost one or more seahorses. And it depends on their size, where they've been stung, and a lot of things. The other thing is Aptasia will take over a tank very rapidly. It proliferates very rapidly, and it can basically totally mess up your tank. The supposedly there's certain one species at least of peppermint shrimp that will eat Aptasia, although you never know what you're getting when you look at them because they all look virtually identical from my perspective. Best thing as far as I'm concerned to use, pull everything out, get a flamethrower.
No, you can't flamethrow everything. Vincent, have you
It's the
ever
best way to get rid
experienced?
of the Aptasia.
Have
Uh,
you ever experienced Aptasia?
I've experienced it in my seahorse tanks, in my reef tank, which I'm having right now.
Yeah.
And so in the seahorse tank, I just tore it all down, bleached the rock. Actually, I left the rock out. And in the reef tank, I got to figure out how I'm going to address it. And I
Yeah,
haven't.
because if you start killing that stuff chemically, you're going to lose corals too.
What do you
Not
mean?
necessarily.
Yeah, no. What do you mean, Cheryl?
I zapped mine in the reef tanks. Now, I guess I shouldn't say this really, but I used hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I would, because I know how to handle hydrochloric acid, it's okay. If you have no experience with it, don't ever bother with it. If you're going, you can get, as a poor man's alternative, buy, what do they call it? Pickling
Aptasia.
vinegar. Pickling vinegar, I think, is at
Oh,
7%.
No, you're
pickling
right. You're
lime.
right. Yeah.
No, pickling vinegar.
Oh, vinegar?
Yeah.
It's lime
And
vinegar
you
though.
put it in
He's
the
right.
hypodermic, and when you inject these things, you have to inject it into the hole that they retract into.
Their
Don't
mouth.
just try to inject it into them, because as soon as you're going to touch them, it's going to withdraw. But when you inject it into their hole, now the other thing you have to do is make sure that if you have something above that hole that is going to be
Oh my
affected.
God, this YouTube video is being demonetized. I can tell you already. We're talking holes and go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
Anyway, if you have, say, a coral right above that, then make sure you're going to have something that's able to deflect any of the acid or the vinegar, whatever that you're injecting with, to make sure it doesn't affect the coral above, because it's going to rise up. You'll see bubbles come out, and it'll rise up and affect the coral. So just having something as a baffle, and unless you're going to try and zap a hole from a tank of about 50 or 100 or whatever at a time, it's not going to affect your pH or anything else in the long run, because there normally there's enough
There's enough buffering in there already.
enough buffer in there to take care of it. And if you know you are doing a lot of them, then then you can do a water change afterwards to replace that buffer content.
Yeah.
So the main thing is just not to have anything that might be affected by it to be able to deflect the upward flow, because once you inject that in there, whether it's the hydrochloric or whether it's the 7% vinegar, it's going to create bubbles in there when it's reacting. I don't think it's when it's reacting with the aptasia. I think it's when it's reacting with the limestone or that's in the rock, and it creates bubbles that come out.
Good point.
Anyway,
I would just say,
I never ever had it in the Seahorse tank, but my reef tanks, I had the problem, and then I just kept at it, and then eventually it was all gone.
Well, one of the problems with aptasia is if you don't get rid of it right away, it's going to take over the tank, literally. And it's one of those things where I learned very early on, it was much easier to treat everything in advance to make sure there was nothing living on there like aptasia that you put in your tank than it was to try to eradicate it once the tank was infected. And I know people that have lost seahorses getting stung by aptasia.
well, I agree with you 110%. Prevention is worth a pound of whatever that phrase is. However, after keeping seahorses, set up my 65-gallon. I did rock that I'd already taken, bleached, recycled. It was rock that I trusted, but I added macros and gorgonians, and snails, and all of a sudden, aptasia. And all of a sudden means it was covered. Like I woke up one day and saw one, and then there's 20, and then the next day there's 100. And I will tell you, in my personal experience, if you're not sure-handed, or if you're not, I don't even know how to say it. Like if you're not good at, putting something together exactly. I tried the lemon juice, and the aptasia multiplied. I tried the lime juice, or the vinegar, multiplied. I tried Joe's juice, multiplied. Not only did they not die, because what Ray is saying is absolutely right. You have to inject these things directly into the mouth of the aptasia. The second it closes, you're done. The second it whatever, you're done. If you don't get it directly, then not only do they not die, they spit out babies. And that's not really, they don't spit out babies, they spit out spores.
You end up with a fur ball tank.
Yes, and let me just tell you what I ended up doing. And it was a pain in the boudoir, but I ended up using egg crate to separate my tank into two parts. And I pulled all the rock and everything from one side. I used fenbidazole to kill the aptasia in a separate location. And it was still a risk, because think about everything we talk about. If I put that clean rock back into the tank and remove the other rock, who's to say they're not shooting out spores, right? So I did the other side. Guess what? After all of that, there was still aptasia. I was ready to shut down that tank. And then I talked to a few people. I found a good source for actual peppermint shrimp. Cheryl said earlier, it's hard to tell if they're good or if they're the right species, because you have to have the right species. But I found the right species. I talked to the store. They were, and I think Heather and I talked about this last week. I had the store not feed the peppermint shrimp. I had them basically, I don't want to say starved. It was only, half a day, but I had them not fed. And Heather's talked about not feeding her peppermint shrimp, because then when you put them in the tank, nowhere near a feeding for the seahorses, they attack the aptasia because they're hungry, right? And that is what ended up working for me. I know Gina's Reef last week talked about nudibranchs. Those work too. They just work slowly. And at that point, my tank was infested. So it's different if you find one or two aptasia versus they're everywhere. And as Cheryl said earlier about injuries, I have a video somewhere of my female trying to snake a piece of mysis that the aptasia was trying to grab and getting stung right in the snout. And she jumped. I say jumped. Obviously, they don't jump, but she flew across the tank, obviously hurt, doing the coughing motion, the snip going crazy. She was hurt. It was scary as hell. She did survive, but she was a 5 to 6 year old seahorse. So she was, already healthy and bulky. For a new seahorse, that could be or a dwarf seahorse, that would be it, So, hey, Aquachar. Go ahead.
They will come in. They will come in on snails.
Yeah.
And macroalgae, almost anything they can hitchhike in.
That's why I'm so.
Do you guys scrub the shell? Because that's my new thing.
No.
I scrub the shells of snails. No. Why not?
Well, because I haven't bought any snails in a long time, but mine seem to live forever.
I've never had snails in the 20 years of my seahorse hobby, or crabs, or anything else.
I know your feeling about cleanup crew, and I'm going to let you say it, Ray. But I would just say I'm the snails and seahorses girl. I love the snails, and I can give you a link to snails that eat certain algae. But I did want to say, Aquachar, so glad to see you here. And we're going to have to do a giveaway soon for the 3,500 subscribers and for the holidays. So I'm going to get with you on the side. But go ahead, Ray.
No, it's just a personal choice that I made not to put anything like that in my seahorse tank. Obviously, I have them in the reef tanks and that. So I had the experience with them for a couple decades, but I just chose not to. And then in the end, I found out it wasn't actually needed. The problem that I have is too many people, when they start having problems, they think that the cleanup crew is the answer to all their problems. And depending on the severity of their problem, it may solve your problem at the time, but the likelihood is that it's not going to solve your problem, that you'll put those in there and you're still going to have to rectify the main problem.
No, I agree with you. And you've made the comment before, Ray, that if you're adding cleanup crew, they eat it for sure, but then they poop it and it's still in the tank. And I agree with you. I just like the snails. I mean, I just think they're cool. And so my main thing was to make sure to scrub their shells. Anytime I get snails, I scrub their shells with a toothbrush, a clean one, new one. But yeah, and Aquachar said, hate those things. And do you mean peppermint shrimp or do you mean aptasia? Because you said I always take a rock to the store and take a rock to the store and take a rock with me to catch the ones who eat. Right. I mean, that's another good way, is to test which would eat. With me, I didn't have that opportunity because I'm not in with the store like that. But yeah, asking them not to feed them just happened to work for me. Obviously, just like everything else, guys, there's so many multiple different ways. Yeah. And if you're going to have it, if you want a tank with no problems, have an artificial tank with seahorses only.
How can you not love that? Wait, let's see if you can see it. Oh, well,
let's see.
Let me do it. Okay, once. Yeah. Oh, come on. Now, how can you not love that? Oh, wait.
If we could see it.
Oh, yeah. Look at that snail. I love it. Or is that a tube worm? What was that?
This it's just I don't even know what kind of snail it is. It's only about the size of a maybe almost a quarter. Not a turbo.
Maybe
I'd
a
have to see the
Mexican.
gel to have an idea.
Well,
No, no,
anyways,
it's not. I don't know what it is. I have a turbo the size of a golf ball
I believe
Oh,
it.
or
wow.
bigger.
Well, see, and with I never got actual turbos for my Seahorse tanks because I'm one of those. We've already established that I'm lazy, right? Okay, so I like rock formations. I like to use rock to make like an aquascape. I like the aquascape of it, and so, but I don't use glue and I don't use anything to hold anything. So with turbos or the conch that I had in the first tank, they knock stuff down too much. I mean, they're too big. They knock shit over. So I like the Mexican turbos. They for some reason don't seem to get as big and don't seem to be as disastrous. But yeah, I love my snails. They're cool to watch and to see. And mine always have babies. I don't know why, but they do.
I have a
So
freshwater tank full of snails.
see, and that's bad in a freshwater tank, isn't it?
Now, you know what? They never got out of control. Like somebody told me they would, but I think part of it is because I have 4 Cory catfish.
Mm.
And I've heard that they do snack on those. So I think they must be keeping the population under control because it goes up and down. There'll be a bunch and then there'll be less and but they're never like just tons and tons.
Well, no, I think you made a good point, and Heather's point earlier about the Blenny is that, or was it a Goby? I'm sorry, guys, drinking too
Or is
much
it
wine.
Plenty?
Yeah. So my point is, if you have a reputable source to buy fish, something that eats something else really is the answer. I mean, it is.
Mhm.
I think that. I know, Ray, you think that just doing more maintenance is the answer, but some of us are lazy. Okay.
No,
Yeah,
it's,
but it
it's not
doesn't
the
take
answer.
away from
It's
maintenance
a
to
choice,
have a
that's all.
cleanup crew.
Okay, Ray, say what you just said, and then Holly. Ray first.
It's not necessarily an answer. It's just my choice. And I choose that way because I don't see that the cleanup crew is going to do what a lot of people think it will do. So why bother with it in the first place? Because I'm going to do, the things that I decided on doing, like my hands-on approach. I had decided on doing that in the first place, so I'm going to do it anyway. So why bother putting the other stuff in? But it's like you said there, you like watching those things.
Yeah.
So it's just like people like a lot of guys like redheads, a lot like blondes, and there's a lot of women that like hairstyles on men a certain way, and others don't like them that way. It's all comes down to what your own personal taste is, what you want, and then you decide then what you're going to do to accomplish it.
And I can already see Cheryl's thinking dirty. Stop it, Cheryl. But no,
No,
I'm with.
I was watching Vincent fix his hair in the mirror as Ray was
Yeah, I
talking
was over
about.
here.
Oh,
Speaking
well,
of
but no,
hairstyles,
I do agree though, Ray. It comes down to what you want, and I do just like the snails. I just pets just as much as my seahorses or my family, whatever. But I think a lot of people. I think your point is very valid that a cleanup crew, like the reason I got into snails is not because they'd fix the problem. It's because they made it look better. So they would eat the algae. I got specific snails to eat specific algae and etc. Understanding that didn't take away from the organics in the tank. I still had to do the work, right? Like I get your point. I just like the snails. I like the tank to look pretty and I don't want to scrub every week. So they do that work for me. And then I understand that I have to clean up after them too. Right? Make sense?
yeah, and that's I was basically agreeing with Ray. The cleanup crew doesn't stop you from doing the maintenance. They don't really contribute to cleaning up the tank, I don't think. They're just cool to watch.
Well, and they
Well,
do clean it up though. they clean
Not
up the
totally,
algae.
not as much as you need it to. If you
Right,
rely
right,
on only the cleanup crew to clean up, you're going to have high organics in the tank.
right.
Yeah.
You
Because
got
my
to take
cleanup
care of the
crew
water.
they don't get every little piece of everything. And
Mhm.
they eventually, like Heather and I've discussed before, the longer you've had them, they get spoiled and lazy. They want to eat with the
The food.
seahorses. They
Yep.
don't, they're not cleanup crew anymore. They're
Right.
pets,
No,
and
I agree
I think
110%.
there's a danger in relying in believing, like, if you get a cleanup crew, like Ray said, that's a lot of what people think when they get a cleanup crew. They think, oh, the cleanup crew is going to clean up after the seahorses, so I don't have to worry about it. And
Right.
that's absolutely not true.
Right. No,
And they
I
get
They'll
this
clean
bill.
up as much as they want to.
right. And again, I think I already said this, but I'll repeat it. I like the snails because I think they're cool
But they're
and
fun.
because they're fun and they'll eat the algae. So like
Mhm.
they take care of my rocks. That doesn't mean I can forget that that algae would be growing if it wasn't for them because of the
Mhm.
organics in the tank.
Now,
Absolutely. Good
wait a
point.
minute. I have never seen a serious snail eat plants of any kind.
No.
They're carnivorous.
Okay.
I'm messing
Right.
with you.
No, you're right though, Cheryl. And I can post again. I have a great link to a very old but very wise literal chart of which snail for which algae. And like that's
Mhm.
one of the reasons I don't eat turbos is because of the macros I have in my tank. They'd eat the macros. So I
Yeah.
don't want them to eat them. So I want them to eat the nuisance algae. There are snails that eat certain things. And of course they can, go to a different diet, but typically you're going to have them eat certain things. And
Yeah.
Shyla said, what snails do you guys recommend for a bare bottom tank? Somebody go first while I cough.
Well, I can't help there because I've never kept them in a seahorse tank, so I don't know what you're doing there.
Yeah.
I just
And I don't keep snails. I use what I recommend is a magic eraser.
Right.
I just get an
Earl?
assortment. I get turbo snails, different snails. I mean, when I go to get them, I order an assortment, not by type.
The variety pack.
They all work.
Mhm.
I disagree with that, but go ahead, Cheryl.
Listen, I was just going to say, some of them, it's like the nefarious snails are I can talk, primarily going after fatty food. They love mice and shrimp.
Yep.
And you can literally walk in, have themselves buried in the sand. As soon as you add that mice and shrimp or any seahorses, they're coming out and they're going to be hunting. Versus something like a turbo or some of the others that are like, yeah, I'm going to climb up here on this rock and see what I can find. And they all feed differently and have different food preferences. And but I'll tell you
See,
what, one of the things they're not going to do is they're not going to remove dissolved organics.
Right. Right. And I
well,
would
they're going to
say
add to it.
I never, when I say I disagree, I always agree with everybody on this channel. But here is my point of view. And this is the article I was, it's very old. I think it's from, I don't know, 2013. But at the bottom of this post in the link I just put, there's a literal chart
There, yeah.
that says, are you to film algae, diatoms, macro? So like macro, serif and trochus. I can't say the word right, but avoid those if you're not wanting to get rid of your milk. Cyano, hair, it tells what they eat. And to this day, this has proved correct for me. I mean, I can't even tell you. It's worked for me every time. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Get an assortment if you just are trying to take care of a tank. But if you have macros in the tank or, certain things that you don't want gotten rid of, this link because it's helpful. Anyways, it's in the description. Let me stop sharing.
Now,
Yeah, I don't.
favorites.
Now, I was going to say,
Go
I
ahead,
just don't know
Vincent.
the names of them. So whoever I'm getting them from, maybe they know. But
Right.
there's so many different ones. I just tell them I want an assortment, and I've never seen them go after food. Never
That's
seen them go.
interesting. Because the serious,
Go
they'll
ahead,
bury
Sean.
themselves in the sand and disappear. And as soon as you start adding food in, because that's what they're looking for is basically meaty food, you can start seeing the
The
tentacles
antenna.
coming out, the antenna, and you can see them rise up. And once they get a beeline on a piece of food, they can move really quick.
Like at night when I go out there, especially on my reef tank, they'll be on the glass
Yeah.
when the lights go down, and they'll be on the glass all night. I'll look and there'll be 12, 13 of them on the front glass alone, and cleaning it.
That's what Shyla said. She said, I have sand, but all the Trocus, Mexican, and red-footed snails live on the glass and the walls, so I think sand or no sand would be fine. And to be honest, I think somewhere in the article, I can't look right now, but I think somewhere in the article it talks about that. I would say Necerius, Cheryl's pointed out, they only eat meaty foods. So they're not going to help you with algae. They're good, but they would eat leftover seahorse food if that's your goal. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. And that article has really helped me in which to use where. I love the Mexican snails. I love I honestly and
I had Seraph and Turbo and Mexican,
Seraph.
I think, were the kind I had when I had mine. But I think I had them so long, they weren't making, and a lot of them kept disappearing, I think, because they'd get stuck in the filter sock. Or when I got rid of my sand, I think I got rid of them, sand, rock, all that. I think they just went with it.
I'll be honest, I haven't had any snails in any of my tanks now in several years because I'm the excess food cleanup crew. That's my attitude. That's my job. And
and I'm lazy and I'm not doing all that. So I already have to do the water changes and keep up the water, but I like my snails because they keep the rocks clean. In fact, in my 40-gallon all-in-one, I don't have enough snails.
Yeah,
that's why I have algae on my rocks.
When you've got 30 to 50, 3 to 3.5 inch erectus in a 58-gallon tank, it's going to take more than some snails to keep them going.
Sure.
And that's the kind of stuff I periodically run into. And that doesn't include the nursery tubs. There's still some more 3-inch plusers in several nursery tubs. So I have to, that's why I really don't use snails much anymore, because I know there's no way they can keep up with what I'm doing.
Sure.
Well, I don't keep them in the tubs.
I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead.
I don't keep them in the tubs or the nurseries. I mean, not until they're older, juveniles.
Yeah. Yep, and that's me too. When I had tubs, or when I was raising fry, doing again soon, I wouldn't have snails in there. I'm talking about anyone, Zen Ginger, who's Zen Ginger, wink, wink, that's just trying to set up a seahorse tank. Then snails can be a good thing. Seahorse Corner said, I wouldn't bother with Necerius and a bare bottom. They like living under the sand. Right. I thought that Holly had told us that she had Necerius that crawled around the bare bottom. But you are right. They do require sand. So I agree with that statement. Also,
well, the thing is, my biggest concern is leftover food, like in nursery systems. And I'm much better off and much safer, depending on the size and the species, of using bison shrimp or different types of invertebrates in the live invertebrates that the seahorses will feed on, and then will also act as a cleanup crew.
Sure. And Zen Ginger said, you didn't know that nerites could go in full salt. Will tell you this. In a saltwater tank, you have to be careful with them because they do every single night something about the salinity, I'm sure, as you're pointing out. You'll find them at the top of the tank. and those little suckers will crawl out of the tank if you're not careful and end up on your floor. I can tell you that. I've experienced it, but I still love them because they're awesome little algae eaters and they're cute, right? I mean, I love the little teeny ones, but neorites, yeah, you're right. They're a risk because they will crawl out of the tank and they have to go up top out of the water. They completely get out of the water, and if they're smart at the top, if not, they go. I have some smart ones, lucky for me. And
those aren't very smart snails.
Kevin said Seraph come out of the sand at night, clean the glass. The Seraph feeding, Trocus eat all over all the time. Go see. So I mean, all these snails have their jobs to do and do them well, right? And oh yes, unwanted snail, vermeted snails.
Vermeted. Oh
Yeah.
Vermeted, yes. Oh god, those are the things that shoot their little webs, right? Aren't
Yeah,
they?
the little tube.
Yeah, they attach to a fixture and shoot their webs. Oh hell no, no for me. But anyways, let's see. Zen Ginger, you've had them crawl out of my very clean. They aren't the smartest, so I put them in the tanks with lids. Okay, sorry, Ray. What do you want to say? Your turn.
I just wanted to make a comment that while I haven't kept them in 20 years of seahorse keeping, I know 30 odd years ago I was told that they were going to solve my problem with algae on the glass in my reef tank and my fish only tanks. And that was basically why I got them at the time. But I soon discovered that it didn't really solve my problem. After a few days leaving things like that, the snails would be crawling all over and eating, but I'd look at the tank and it was all cloudy except all these stupid pathways all over the place where the snails ate. And I still had to use my cleaning magnets to be able to view the tank properly. So the way I look at it that way, if with my seahorse tanks, I'm concerned about bacterial slime on the glass. And so if I had snails that were eating bacterial slime, it would probably be the same as these snails eating the algae on the reef tank. And so haphazard snacking of the bacterial slime like that isn't sufficient, in my opinion. So I'm still going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the magnets and clean it and let the fine filtration get the stuff out of the water, then clean the filter pads afterwards. And so if I was going to put snails in there, it wouldn't be to accomplish a task. It would be because I just like to have them.
Yeah.
Well, as Holly said, the answer is truly a magic eraser, right? I mean, that's the answer, not a snail.
Yeah.
But I did want to point out that Kevin said he's testing an Asterius and a bare bottom right now. Please come back how it goes, because we never want to advise to put a snail in that wouldn't be happy. You know, as Ray and everyone has said, you get snails, they do perform a purpose, but I mean, I disagree with they don't do their job. They just won't do all of the job. And either way, we don't want to hurt the snails either. So
one thing Kevin just posted about the mysterious snails, and he has them in a tank that's bare bottom. I have kept mysterious snails for prolonged periods of time in bare bottom tanks without issues. They do like to have a little shelter that they can get in under, but they don't have to bury themselves in sand at night or when there's no food coming out. They just need a place to hide. And there's a lot of different ways you can put in little ornaments or stuff, even a little tube like a PVC tube that they can get into, and they will do quite well and stay very happy. Just on the side note to what he was saying.
Sure. And he also said Trocus and neorite snails are tidal zone snails. They can live for hours out of water. That must be why they crawl up and hang out of the water. Point. And Seahorse Corner said that she did Asterius in her fry tanks, bare bottom. They did fine. Didn't think it would hurt them. Just meant they prefer the sand. But the fry would snick their spouts when mice is training. Love it. Love it. And Shyla made the comment, I just wanted to add more life to the tank. I use a magic eraser as well. Hey, let me turn my camera back on. High five for the magic eraser. High five. And
What's the magic eraser? Magic
No.
eraser.
Whoa.
it was
Whose
Vincent.
dog?
It was
Always my dog and my
Yeah,
cat.
I was just saying, somebody's got a dog.
Yeah.
anyways, guys, it is 10:05, so I'm gonna have to call it for tonight. I hope we helped with the flatworms and with the aptasia. We can always talk about this some more depth, but let me know in the comments what you want us to do for a giveaway, because we got to start doing giveaways and having guests so that more people come. We had a great crowd tonight, more than usual, but we got to grow this. We're slacking. So let me know what we can do for giveaways, what you would like to be given away, and what guests you'd like to see.
An
And
ACB gift card for my grocery store so I can buy food for next week. I'm kidding.
wait a minute, Ray and Holly have one more thing to say. Ray, what was your question?
I wanted to know why use a magic eraser instead of a mag cleaner. Like, I've never had any problem with my mag cleaners. I've been using them for many decades.
Well, I wipe when I use the magic eraser, I'm doing all the sides and the bottom as well of the tank. The magic eraser is a sponge size. It's this big. So it covers more surface at once, and stuff is just sticks to it like nothing else.
It
I've
comes
never
off.
found anything that works like it. I have mag cleaners, but
My mag cleaners
they
are as
don't
big as
get everything, and they're
eraser.
small. They're only like this big. You go this way, this way, this. I do the magic eraser in my 75-gallon, and I can have the whole entire tank, bottom and everything, wiped down in about 5 minutes.
So you can't do the bottom, Ray.
Right.
Yes, again,
How?
you just have to know how to do it. Well, I can't get underneath any of the decor, but I still work it down, and then I take the other magnet that I have and pop it underneath there, and then take the first one away when it's on the side, and it's automatically drawn to the one that's underneath the bottom, and the inside piece then gets caught on the magnet that's on the bottom. Now, mind you, I got two sets of mag cleaners, but also my mag cleaner is at least the size, if not bigger than a magic eraser. And I've had them for decades, and I've never replaced them, never needed to.
Well,
I have
I
a
would say,
few, but they skip. They'll
Yep.
skip, and they'll leave streaks. I've got
Maybe it's the
my
quality of the cleaner that you're using.
can't put anything under the bottom because they're on a solid surface. It's on a desk. My tank,
well,
so you don't
Ray,
have any.
Ray, you might be right that it's the quality of the cleaner because everything's downgraded these days. But I do like the magic erasers because, I mean, like even in my house, forget the tanks, they just get stuff up that nothing else gets up. It just sticks to it for some reason.
I'm totally disappointed in
Don't
magic
they
eraser.
disintegrate?
If it was really magic, I could just wave it and everything would be clean.
What'd you say, Vincent?
Don't they disintegrate?
I've never had a problem with
They
it.
do because I wear mine down to nothing practically, and then I get myself another one.
But it's not releasing anything.
No, it's melamine. It's basically sand.
Yeah. So, anyways, magic erasers plus, we say.
One
And
quick
they
side
don't scratch anything. They work well on the acrylic.
They work on acrylic?
Yeah, I have an acrylic tank.
Because I have an acrylic tank for my reef, and the only thing I'll use is my tank is 29 years old, and the only thing I'll use is a credit card.
Oh, that's.
And
yeah.
I go in with a credit card, and I scrape.
But doesn't that skip too? Like
No.
when I've used a credit card, everything doesn't come off.
Well, it does. I can look and go. I might have to go look through the side, but I can get it all off with a credit card.
Well, there you go. Different
Wait, I
methods.
need to send in my credit
They
cards.
sell like a plastic scraper in the hardware store, a plastic, it's just
Yep.
like a razor blade, but it's plastic. They sell those, and I use that for the coralline algae, and then I use my magic eraser.
And
Well,
if you
I will
look at my
tell you.
tank,
Sorry, go ahead.
if you look at my tank, 29 years old, it looks brand new.
I mean,
Yeah.
29 years
No,
old.
and no scratches.
We got to
Mhm.
take your word for it. 29 years old. But I will
Yeah.
tell you, there's a video out there. I'll try to find it that I made, show a quick clip. But Dan helped me put together. I had a scraper, like an aquarium scraper, and I attached a vacuum, an aquarium vacuum. And so it works together. You scrape, and the stuff is vacuumed up. Because the
Yeah.
one thing I don't like is magic eraser, credit card, mag cleaner. It doesn't matter. You're scraping it off the glass, and it's just going in the water.
Yeah, it's
And
going in the water.
I've literally seen where I scrape something off, it goes in the water, and if it's like the green algae, it's sticking to some other part. So it's just moving. It's not going anywhere, right? So
That's
I really
why I
liked
do
my
that
invention.
all on cleaning day, because then the siphon comes along and gets it. Well, and especially in my grow out tank, that's why it's so clean all the time, is because I do that every week. I take the magic eraser and I go over every side and the bottom, and then I use the siphon. And I take out all the decorations and leave them only what folks are hanging on to at the time, which is usually about 3 things,
You're right.
and so I'm able to get everywhere in there.
Well, I'm telling you, this little invention that I made per Dan's instruction was amazing. And I don't use it on the 40 gallon because it's smaller. I don't need to. But on my 90 gallon, man, by the time I got one wall done, a magic erasing, whatever, the stuff was sticking other places. And by the time I got around to the fourth wall, it was an endless cycle. So when I set up this contraption that strapped the vacuum to the scraper, it was like I scraped it and it went up the vacuum. It was amazing. I got to find that video.
I would love that. I would love to see that. I need one of those.
Well, and it's not one of those. You can't buy it. You got to make it. But I will find that video. And Alicia White, I hope I pronounced that right, said she's late but loves us and honored to be educated on the knowledgeable stuff we share every week. You have many questions, but you'll try to make it next week. Man, please make it next week. If you ever want to come back, because like we chat and we love this community.
Oh, yeah.
And we love just chatting, for someone to jump in and ask specific questions so we could help you, with whatever. We love new people. So thank you for being here. I'm sorry I am going to have to end it because I got to work tomorrow.
Real quick. I got a question for Holly. Do you recognize that ocean in my picture?
I kind of do, but I'm not sure from where.
Where do you think it is?
I would say Monterey area.
Malibu.
Malibu
when I lived in California. Before
see, I haven't spent much time there. That's way farther south than me.
Yeah, it is.
But I think I've been there once.
This is what it used to look like before they totally developed the whole area.
All right, well, this is for the after party, guys, because we're getting into stuff. But I'm going to say thank you to everyone who came tonight because of all the new people coming and the questions. Francis, we need to get you back in here when you can. Anybody who wants to join and ask questions and share, we're here for you. And I got to end it. I got to work tomorrow. And plus, these ladies keep me up all night at the after.
You still got that job?
But anyways, Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we will be back next week. If you have some thoughts on what you would like us to do for a giveaway for the holidays and for our 3,500 subscribers, please reach out to me because we want to do a giveaway that people want, right?
Yeah.
And if there's anybody you want to have seen as a guest on here, please reach out to me. I'll reach out to them. Vincent already gave me some ideas, so we'll get some cool people in here soon. And with that, I do have to say Happy Wine Wednesday. Everybody
Gift
say
cards.
cheers.
Happy Wine Wednesday.
Good
Cheers.
night.
Night all.
Ray's the only one that doesn't cheers, but